I'm Ros Gold-Onwude, and this is Risk and Reward. Today's guest is two-time Super Bowl champion, who's now a vice president at Goldman Sachs, Justin Tuck. What do you think were the biggest risks you had to take to embark on this second career in finance?
I think the biggest risk was going into the unknown, going into the, I have a trainer who used to say, be comfortable in deep waters. I'm not a good swimmer, and he said that for a reason. Be comfortable in deep waters. And basically what that means is learn to be comfortable in the unknown. It'd have been easy for me to go and talk football on ESPN or CBS or whatever platform, right? That would have been pretty easy for me, to be honest with you. It'd have been easy for me to go coach. It'd have been easy for me to buy a couple of car dealerships and let somebody else run them or franchise. And that'd have been pretty easy for me. But I've always been trying to find that thing, that spark that wakes me up in the morning. I still would have been trying to find that. And I think in order for me to find that, I had to go to the unknown and be vulnerable in a space that was foreign to me. I think that's the biggest risk. And also the biggest risk, or a part of that risk, is knowing that when all the platforms picked up the fact that I was going to get an MBA, that was public knowledge. So everybody's going to watch and see, oh, can he hack it? Can he survive in that world? So it'd been very public if I didn't survive in that world, right? And that in its own right brings that level of embarrassment that you couldn't do it. So for me, I think that was the biggest risk.
Justin, when was the first time you truly considered a career outside of football?
High school. I think I was very blessed to have some friends who had made it to the league and in both, the NBA and the NFL. And the one thing I kept hearing, especially from my friends in the NFL, that, this is a league that obviously if you have a long career, you're still going to retire pretty young. And then when you get in the league, everyone calls it not for long. NFL, not for long, right? So I had that mindset where I wanted to play sports to allow me to go to a great institution to get a great education. I never really believed early in my sports career that I was good enough to play in a league like this. So a lot of my motivation was, listen, my parents worked their butt off to take me to practice, take me to camps. I want to utilize that to get a great education and use that route to getting out of our situation. So I always think about that pretty early. But when you think about the pure numbers of people who play high school, college sports to make it to that next level, right? The odds were low. And then when you think about on the finance side, again, I came from Kelton, Alabama. No, I didn't even know what Goldman Sachs was until I got to college. And I would probably venture to say that ain't no one from my demographic knew what Goldman Sachs was from that perspective. So I would say that probably private wealth VP at Goldman Sachs was probably a little bit above playing in the league, just because no one had ever did it.
Right. Okay. So then, you're getting close to the end of your NFL career. And was it immediately clear to you that, all right, I'm going to go apply for business school at Wharton? or were there other career paths that you considered?
You obviously know that most athletes, we get pigeonholed to roles like, sportscasting, coaching, some level of career that evolves around sports. And I just want to be able to branch out. I had those opportunities and I approached them for a little bit, but it didn't really wake me up in the morning with the excitement, knowing that I'd had, a football career. I did just about everything I wanted to do in sports. Loved sports, obviously, but I wanted to branch out. I wanted to do something different. One thing I did create early in my career with the Giants was I created kind of like a Justin Tuck board of directors.
Break that down.
Filled. Yeah. It's filled with some of the most successful people in a lot of different sectors, whether that is finance, tech, sports, real estate. And I did that early in my career with the Giants because I live by this creed of strike while the iron is hot. And what I mean by that is, think about it from the perspective of, we win championships, we win games in New York. It's very easy to get on people's calendars when you're Justin Tuck, the Super Bowl champion, right? It's harder to get on people's calendar when you're Justin Tuck, the retired 11-year guy, right? Because it's a cycle. There's players in the league now that are super hot and everybody wants to talk to them. I used to be that player. So I struck when I was hot to get those relationships and really cultivated those relationships while I was playing, which allowed me to have those relationships now when I'm not playing, right?
I don't know how much you actually know about me. I played ball and I'm a journalist, and I used to be a sideline reporter for the Warriors. And I remember Andre Iguodala.
Iguodala.
Yeah, he's savvy too.
Yeah.
And I remember he pulled me to the side once and he was like, Roz, if you're out here just trying to ask questions and you aren't out here getting to know who's on the sidelines, you missed the point. Yeah. And, and I think he took advantage of that too.
Well, if you think about it, right, especially someone like Andre and being on that team in that town. I know Andre, I've watched him and others like him, but I watched how he's moved in the VC space, the tech space, being in Oakland and San Francisco in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley area, and having that much gravitas to those people. I agree with you. You're missing the point if you're not reaching out to, I can say this name because he's a good friend of mine, Ben Horowitz of Andreesen Horowitz. You're missing the point if you're not reaching out to these people. Because guess what? And I don't look at it from a selfish perspective. I look at it from the perspective of, if I'm talking to these guys, I'm trying to figure out how I can add value to them, right? It's not a one-way street. I'm not going into their office and say, hey, I want to be in your next fund. Hey, I want to make a lot of money because you guys figured it out. No, I'm going in there and saying, I would love to build a relationship with you and figure out how we can share commonalities, share synergies, but more importantly, learn.
What are things that athletes can bring to the table and add value in these types of business conversations and deals to continue to get them?
Yeah, I think one, everything is a team, right? And I don't know any other profession that knows teamwork better than athletes.
Tell me about that first day of school at Wharton. How was it?
Yeah, nervous. Truly more nervous than I've ever been in my life from a personal standpoint, because I was venturing into a lot of unknown, right? So, when I think about the Wharton experience, the first day was nerve-wracking, and just figuring out if the professor is going to look at me as Justin Tuck, the football player, or is he going to look at me as Justin Tuck, the guy who's trying to transition from football? And I needed a lot of help. I needed help from the perspective of, I had a wife and 2 kids. I was driving back and forth from my house in New Jersey to Wharton every day. That's 2 hours down, 2 hours back, and still trying to keep up with the 24, 25-year-old who had just had 4 years of experience on Wall Street and now are in the NBA to boost their resume. Yeah, it was tough. It was not until I got to work on some projects with a lot of my classmates that they realized this was serious for me. This wasn't Justin Tuck just using his platform to have an easy coast and get an MBA from Wharton. That doesn't. Wharton's not going to allow that. We can talk about the classes that they put you in your first year to basically weed people out who are not serious. So yeah, I think nervous, but truly exciting, because I knew it was going to be something that I was going to either succeed publicly or fail miserably publicly, right? And that was something that truly motivated me.
I remember similar feelings, when I first started at Stanford University. Yeah. And this is for my undergrad. So it was a bunch of freshmen meeting up, and there were freshmen who had already done surgery. There were freshmen who already had patents. And I came in there and was like, I guess I shoot a good jump shot, So I recognize what you're talking about. And you mentioned the nervousness you felt, but whether it was Wharton or entering Goldman Sachs, would you take it a step further to say that there was even, honestly, doubt, worry,
sure,
imposter syndrome?
Oh yeah, definitely nervousness, definitely imposter syndrome, definitely trying to figure out. I didn't want people to know I was at Wharton because I was so afraid that, oh man, this class magic. Our first economic course is basically built to weed you out. And I'll never forget this, right? Our economic department head had to take our final, the final that they gave us, and they give you 2 hours to complete it. he didn't miss any problems, but he didn't finish the test. So just imagine for me, 11 years in the NFL, banging my head around and trying to figure out a way to pass this test when the economic head couldn't finish the test in a 2-hour time slot. A lot of times I see the mistake of athletes trying to transition from that athlete, the sport, to something else and thinking that they have to stay on par with what they were as an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. So that would have been like me saying, oh, I was a Super Bowl champion, all-pro football player. I have to be the Super Bowl equivalent, all-pro equivalent of finance today.
Right.
Doesn't even make any sense.
You started out as an intern and an intern at the company. And like, one of the things I'm wondering is, what does that even look like? You are famous. So like, you are famous, but you're also an intern. And I guess we've already talked about how you viewed yourself, but how did you get other people to view you as more than just a football player?
I think, again, it comes to humbling yourself and again, realizing that you're not Justin Tuck, the Super Bowl champion here. You're Justin Tuck, the first-year analyst intern for a team that runs $30 billion in management. Go get the coffee, bring the donuts, jump on teams, jump into things when you have no idea what they're talking about. Learn by osmosis, be quiet, take notes. All that stuff for me is considered the process. I love the process. I really do. Trust me, there were some times where I said in the back of my head, why am I doing this? I could be on the lake with a fishing rod and a nice glass of, I'll say iced tea for the program. But yeah, I think it's hard because, again, we all have egos. My ego was walking in the room and everybody going, oh, that's Justin, right? And now it was walking in the room, even though they were still saying that's Justin Tuck, they were trying to figure out, are you here to just be a mascot, right? Or are you here to dive deep and truly learn this business and, in a lot of ways, bring those same motivations, that same fight and leadership and tenacity that made you a Super Bowl champion to this world too, right? I came to Goldman and I look at David Solomon like I want his job. I know I'm a long way from being anywhere close to that, but that's my motivation, right?
You made over $40 million over the course of your NFL career. And this is public information. You can Google it.
I made a lot more off the field.
Off the field. Why not just ride off into the sunset?
That's not me. It's not. There's so many more things that I want to do in this life that have nothing to do with money. Again, I'm a country boy from Kelson, Alabama. I could go back there and live like a king and not have a worry in the world. But I would feel like I did a disservice to the talents that God has given me. I think He's put us all in positions of authority or success to lend that platform to those who might be less fortunate than us. And for me, I tried the whole retirement, sit down, play golf for about 2 weeks. It's not me. So I didn't necessarily want football or sport to be my legacy. I look at MIchael Strahan right now, and to be honest with you, the things that he's done off the football field, 10 years from now, nobody will ever remember that he's one of the best football players ever. They're going to remember him for interviewing some of the more, important people in the world and talking on TV and doing all the things that he's doing outside of football. I think that's his biggest accomplishment. I truly follow in those footsteps in saying that, yes, I played football, but that's not my legacy. My legacy is, in any regard, using the platforms that God has given me to be of service to people and to truly help people get out of their situations, whether that is through connecting them with the right people, giving them expertise on the questions that they ask, and truly being beneficial to the world that way.
It makes me think, your children, your kids will have been alive longer to witness you as a businessman and in finance more than they have been able to witness you even as a great football player. What does that mean to you?
It's a source of pride, knowing that My kids are fanatic football fans, fanatic sports fans. Like you ask my son Jace about anything regarding anything sports, he's probably going to have a really good opinion on it. But I'm more proud of, in the pandemic, all of my meetings have been in Zoom in my house, in my home office. And I love the fact when he comes in, like he gets breaks from his virtual schools and he comes in and listens to me talk to clients, talk to, Goldman Sachs executives. He watches the markets with me. He's super interested in it because I'm interested in it. It wasn't going to be a person of that went out and worked and did something good for the world. It was going to be, oh, well, my dad sat down and did anything. Why should I go out and get a career? Why should I? So that hit me hard in those 2 weeks. And I knew then that I had to go and do something where, again, passion and something that really wakes me up early in the morning on fire to go do what I do. Everyone talks about, Justin Tuck, the football player. Justin Tuck, the football player in this world gets me in the door. But, Joe Smo is not giving me a $100 million mandate because I sacked a couple of quarterbacks. Joe Smo is giving me that mandate because he feels as though, and we've proven or showcased the ability to make critical financial decisions that's going to benefit him and his family. So I tell people all the time, right? Everybody looks at me and says like, oh, you're just successful because you're Justin Tuck. Yes, but I'm successful because I'm Justin Tuck because I've put in the work to try to perfect this craft, just like I put in the work to try to perfect the craft of football. If you think for a second that some guy who or family or lady or whatever it may be that has worked their butts off to create this amount of wealth is just going to pass it on to me just because I was a good football player, I mean, that sounds like the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. So for me, that's the Super Bowl for me right now.
You better talk that talk. And I love that you're still getting a rush. You get the rush.
Justin Tuck's journey was untraditional, to say the least. But by taking the risk to learn a completely new craft, he's found a new kind of reward. Justin may have retired from the football field, but he's still feeling that Super Bowl rush in the boardroom.
What was the ultimate reward of everything you're putting your effort, your time, your vulnerability, and the public pressure on? What's the light at the end of this tunnel that you're hoping for?
I think the reward for me is there's some kid out there looking at me, and I might not ever meet him or her, but there's some level of that out there that's saying, man, the story, the Justin Tuck story or the Andre Iguodala story or whoever that may be, they resonated with it. And we might have that opportunity to save a kid from going down the wrong path because we challenged ourselves. We wasn't afraid of that quote unquote risk. I was that kid. I grew up in Kelton, Alabama. That place is not a place for a Goldman Sachs VP. That place is not a place for the career I had in football. It's a great place and I love it to death. And I've seen a lot of people come from small towns and kind of write it off, right? It takes a level of commitment. It takes a level of not giving a damn what other people tell you to achieve the success that I've achieved. For that reason, I can never pay it back. Me and my wife, we truly live by this creed. We can never pay it back, so we have to pay it forward. And what I'm doing now is hopefully paying it forward for that next Justin Tuck, for that next kid who was told, oh, because where you're from, you can't accomplish that. No one has ever done that before. Well, guess what? If no one's ever done it before, that means that I could be the first. That's just how I've always lived my life.
Man, that is beautiful. Thank you so much, Justin.